Okay, so we're now going to start a new project. We can either do that by going up to the top, clicking on File and pressing New, or we can press Command N and that will make a new track. It's just another shortcut that you may want to use. Here are a number of presets you can choose from, such as the hip hop, which brings in like drum kits, which have got 808s and other sounds in. Electronic, which is more for your sort of EDM production, so it's got loads of synths. Orchestral's got like flutes, violins, French horns already loaded up. Let's just go for an empty project. Let's double click. And let's just use an audio track. We'll explain what audio is a bit later. And can we just deselect where it says input, monitoring and record enable. Just have that deselected whenever you bring a new track in. These two buttons, if you don't know what they do, input monitoring basically means that it's listening to whatever's plugged into input number 1. On the front of your Focusrite sound card, there are two inputs, input 1 and input 2. If you've got your microphone plugged into input number 1 and you want to listen to it straight away, press input monitoring. If you don't want it, deselect it. Record enable, we'll go into that in a little more detail. It's very simple, but don't want to waste time. So I'm going to have those deselected. I'm going to press create. Here's a new audio track up here. Before you do anything else, save it. Logic does do auto saves and backups, but it's best that you take control of it straight away and just press save. If you don't like the name what you called it, so if you've just called it, EDM track 1, and later on you want to rename it, that's fine, you can do that, but always start with a name. So again, the shortcut for save is Command S, like that, and we're going to put this on our desktop, and we're going to call this Jax Jones. Ring. Always give it something, give it a name, not just don't run your handle on the keyboard like that and just give it loads of random letters. I've seen that done before. You'll forget what project it is, whether it's this random bunch of letters or that one, who knows. So always give it a sensible name to start off with. The reason why we put it on our desktop, because we're working on a network, which basically means all the Macs connect to each other. You want to save it on the desktop. The desktop is a location in the Mac that is physically there. Okay, if you put it in your documents or in your music, it won't be saved on that Mac. It will be saved on the network. The network is basically saving it to something called a SAN, which is located the other side of the building, which means every time you want to save to it, it's got to ping the information to the SAN and back again, like this, okay? And what happens is you'll get a little prompt that keeps going, drop out, and the music that you're making will stop. That's because it's having a hard time sending the information backwards and forwards to the SAN all the time. So just save it on your desktop, and at the end of your session, before you leave, just drag it over to your documents then, and let it do the transfer. So always work on a Logic session on your desktop. The other thing is, when we do advanced audio editing later, if you've saved it in your documents and you're trying to work from your documents, all of the audio editing functions are grayed out. That's a Logic thing. It's not our network, it's a Logic thing. So always work with your project on your desktop. So that's what we're doing now. Hit save. One thing I didn't actually do there, and I should have done really, so I'm just going to go back into that. Always make sure audio files is selected. Otherwise, what will happen is, if say for example you've downloaded like a beat or an acapella off the internet and you've dragged it over into your Logic project, you've pressed save and you've forgotten to tick audio files, it won't actually store that audio file in the project. So when you log off and when you come back again, the audio file will be missing, and so you'll have to start over again. So always make sure that's selected. The other ones you don't need to worry about until we do some advanced stuff later, but just make sure audio files is selected. I'm just going to press save. I'm just going to replace that just to make sure those changes have been applied. So we're now going to drag over the acapella that you would have downloaded. So it's on your desktop or in your downloads. I've just dragged mine to my desktop. Drag it over like this and let go. Now, if you've been that person who's ignored my instruction and didn't save it first onto your desktop, when you drag audio into Logic and it's not saved, sometimes it bugs out, sometimes it crashes. So if you've got the spinning ball of death on your screen right now, that's your problem, you didn't press save. Give me a shout and I'll come over. So we've dragged this in. We can now hear it. Some things we just want to do when we're working in Logic is just setting up a couple of settings. The first one is your metronome. Make sure it is turned on just by clicking on there or pressing K on your keyboard. The next thing, if you click and hold on it and go to where it says metronome settings, you can actually change the sound of the metronome. The metronome sounds like this. It's annoying, I know, but that's the whole point. You need to play to the metronome. So a lot of people, including, well, mostly singers, don't like the idea of being sort of like dictated by this metronome clicking away. But the whole point is for you to play in time with it. So then when you start layering things up, you can then make sure it sounds tight. If you've not recorded to a metronome, your project is going to be in tatters and it's going to be impossible to make it sound good later. Well, I say impossible, ridiculously hard. So just do me the favour, or do yourself the favour, and make sure it's turned on. And in fact, we're going to turn the tonality up. Listen to the difference. Notice how disgusting it sounds when it's up here. Perfect. Let's have it up here. So now we can really hear that metronome. I'm just going to close that. Okay. So if we press play and listen to the metronome, you'll probably notice it's out of time with the a cappella. Okay, so to change the speed of your metronome, up the top here it says tempo. So all you do is double click on it and type in the tempo, which is actually 107 BPM, beats per minute. Or if you don't like typing things in, you can click and drag it up and down. So if I press play now, you'll notice it's in time. So now we've done that, get into the habit. As I said, Logic does do auto saves, but just every now and then, left hand if you're right-handed, or right hand if you're left-handed, just have your left hand hovering over the keyboard, Command S, and save up what you've done so far. Just talking about productivity as a producer, you should always use two hands. I'm going to tell you this many times, use two hands. Don't just be that person who uses their main hand on the mouse and does all the clicking. Your left hand can do things at the same time, so use that as your keyboard hand for all your shortcuts. So right now, here we go. Here's my mixer. Here's my step editor. I can just quickly load up things with my left hand without having to actually go Window, Mixer. Okay, so I'll tell you those shortcuts as I go through. Some quick shortcuts you may want to use is the Command button. Hold that down and then press the up and down arrows. So you can see I'm zooming in, and the left and right arrows do the same, but they zoom horizontally, whereas the up and down are vertical. So now I can see my region a little bit clearer. That's Command up and down. Or you could just go up here and click and drag like this. But again, that means you can only do one thing at the same time.